CP3 buzz. In a recent report, there is discussion about CP3, the point guard, being traded from the San Antonio Spurs. And Wemby doubtful for Tuesday's game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. We break down what that means for the San Antonio Spurs, what CP3 means for the San Antonio Spurs, and more here on Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. And thank you to everybody who has already. The subscriber count is growing and growing. We can't be more appreciative of that. But if you haven't yet, take a spur of the moment to get every Spurs moment moving forward. But without further ado, NBA trade rumors hint at Spurs shopping Chris Paul. Stefan Castle's stellar play might make the point guard expendable. And Stefan Castle, that has been a great story so far. Obviously, as a rookie, you see things where it takes a little bit longer for him to grow. It doesn't just make the instant splash, but Stefan Castle has been showing his impact from the beginning of this season. The Spurs have drafted well, of course, throughout their entirety of their years, and this year is unlike any other. Through 14 games, the fourth overall pick, Stefan Castle, averaging about 10 points per game, but in his 7 starts, he's close to 14 points, 4 assists, almost 3 rebounds, and a steal a game, putting up quality starting numbers, especially from a guy who has only played 14 games in his NBA career. On top of that, shooting about 39% from the three-point line, which is coming out of college, it was a major concern for him. He was not a shooter. He is not a shooter, but he is becoming a consistent player. Just like the guy who is not to be named, but was a San Antonio Spur, helped win the Spurs a championship, but we don't say the name out loud because he doesn't deserve it. But him. He developed into a lethal mid-range shooter, a lethal three-point shooter with a high percentage from just a guy who came in who you thought had offensive versatility a little bit, but truly came in a defensive stopper. Castle presents himself the same way. Athletic, long, can slide. Already seen his impact defensively. He can play defense already at a very high quality level, going to be at an all-NBA level sometime here in the near future. But the offensive game is coming on along quicker than you expected, and that has a lot to do with Chris Paul, the veteran leadership he is showing, the fact that he is a steady physical guard himself. Obviously doesn't have the height or the athleticism that Stefan Castle has, but throughout Chris Paul's career, he has always been a guy who would steady a ship. He is going to slow down the offense, play at his pace, and you see that rubbing off on Stefan Castle. But for now, the Spurs are better on both ends with Chris Paul playing. Castle's offensive and defensive ratings boost are negligible, but for the fact he can run a point in the NBA as a 19-year-old and not totally be putrid is a win. And that is absolutely true. There was a guy, Cal Durrett, writer for Fansided. He said the season is still young, but the Spurs should consider trading Paul around the deadline or even earlier if Castle continues to shine. Paul helping the Spurs get off to a solid start, mentoring the young players, and being traded to a contender for an asset while clearing out playing time for Castle would be a successful stint. I agree with that. Of course, if Chris Paul right now is in a situation where the Spurs aren't winning, the next 20 games are going to be so important, because if the Spurs, say, go 12-8 over the next 20 games, they get to plus 500, they're really in that 8, 9, 7 spot in the Western Conference, showing that they can compete with the high-quality teams, the Warriors, the Thunder, the Rockets, who they have competed with thus far this season, the Mavericks. Obviously just lost to the Mavericks, but didn't have a star with them. So if they could do multiple stars, I should say, but if they can continue to evolve and continue to grow, and especially grow in the win column, then keep Chris Paul around, because you're going to need him for pivotal games in February, March, April, May, hopefully, and obviously we would hope June, but June's not realistic. If not, if they look like they're 7-13, 8-12, and they're on that back half, trading him to a team like Miami who wants to make a push, possibly trading him to Milwaukee. Obviously, Dame Lillard has been missing time. Getting another point guard there. Trading him to LA, helping LeBron out with the point guard position there. We'll see what the moves would be from there, but teams who have draft assets and young pieces for Chris Paul for a stretch run of the season, a lot of teams would sign up for that, and the Spurs would absolutely sign up for more draft picks, because the one thing that they do love is acquiring draft picks. They're taking that from the Thunder mold. They're taking that from the Celtics old mold. Get as many picks as possible. Try to move forward that way, because if you can move forward that way, you get a lot of assets you can trade, plus you can keep to grow with this young roster that they already have. But going into tomorrow's game, OKC, we see them at home for this 3-game homestand that we do have, but it's going to likely be without Victor Wembanyama. He is doubtful for Tuesday's game against the Oklahoma City Thunder with a knee contusion on his right side. They didn't have Vassell last game. He's going to be back. But, of course, when you're missing the guy who's averaging 40 and 13 over his last 4 games, making 6 threes a game, shooting it at a 48% clip, it's going to be difficult to beat one of the teams in the Western Conference that is vying for a championship and that looks like they could be a championship contender even without Chet Holmgren. So we do get to miss the second of Chet versus Wemby. Of course, the 2 rookies, even though Chet came in 2 years ago, but the injury from the LeBron hit. But rookie 2 years ago to now, last year, battling back and forth. And obviously, Chet got the better of Wemby in the first game, only 6 points on one side. The other side, Chet played a very quality game in the Thunder win. But we're going to see this game without both of them, most likely not Victor Wembanyama, unless things change in the 23rd hour. But, hey, we'll see. We'll see how things go there. It's too early to speculate on the season thus hand so far, but I mean, you're missing Sochan. You've missed Wemby for a couple games. That could lead you to being 0-2. You're missing, obviously, Vassell to start the season, and he's still clearly coming back and not at full strength. He's not even playing 30 minutes a game yet, which clearly we know he is more than capable of doing. It is Tre Jones still coming back into the fold, trying to get him there. What's this big rotation? What's this point guard rotation going to be? A lot of moving pieces from a lot of talent with the San Antonio Spurs, but by Christmas, we should be able to get the full construction of this roster, and from that Christmas point on to February, close to that All-Star break, is where we're really going to be able to tell whether this team is a play-in to playoff contender, or if this team is still a year away from being within that mold. I hope they can get to that point. I thought they could be a 44-38 team playing for around that 8 seed in the Western Conference, but at the same time, I do understand that there has been a lot of moving pieces this season, so that's going to be tough. And of course, when you have your leader, Gregg Popovich, out, even though Mitch Johnson has done a great job with this roster, being able to do the things that Pop does, not lose that edge, there's nothing like the real guy. There's nothing like the real thing being there. So, again, get well soon. We'll see you as soon as we see you. We appreciate everything you've done for the Spurs and everything you continue to do for the Spurs. After that Thunder game, they see the Jazz on Thursday. That's a winnable game. And then they see the Warriors. If you could get a win over the Thunder or the Warriors, more likely the Warriors, because of the fact that you'll have Wembanyama back for that game, that would be a great boost. Obviously, the Warriors have played the best basketball in the West so far. That's why they're the 1 seed, currently sitting at 10-2. Their strength in numbers right now, they go 12 deep. But the thing is, the Spurs can also go 12 deep, match the grit, match the athleticism off the bench. But obviously, the Warriors' star-studded power, starting with Steph Curry, that organization, Steve Kerr. We see how they're propelling, and we see how they're going to be making maybe a finals run here in the near future, depending on what this team can progress into over these next 20 games. The last thing I did want to quickly show here, without Victor Wembanyama, this team's not good. This team record-wise hasn't been great with him, but they're 3-9 without him, and they lose by an average of 10 points, getting blown out once every 3 games. So Of course, it's going to be difficult without him because he is just such a focal point. He's 7'5". He protects the basket. He has 4 blocks a game. He's right now plus 24 points a game, and he is shooting great from the three-point line where he started the season not shooting great. But hey, that is the name of the game. Sometimes injuries happen. The best ability is availability. We'll see if we can have him available when we get Sochan available, what this roster will look like. But do you guys think that Chris Paul should be moved at the trade deadline if the Spurs aren't in a great position? Or do you think having him there for the entire season, mentoring this team, still getting Stefan Castle to grow, still getting people like Blake Wesley, Malachi Branham, you still get people like Wembanyama who learn from this guy Vassell, having him in the locker room for an entire year, do you think that's more beneficial? Let me know in the comments there. Again, this has been Spurs Digest with your host, Keenan Warner. I appreciate all of you guys, and I'll be seeing you guys very soon.